If you have shopped at ASDA recently and thought, something feels off, you are not imagining it. Something has changed. Not in a loud way, not with a big announcement, but in the kind of way you feel before you can explain it. The aisles feel quieter. The shelves feel less reliable. The whole place feels like it is trying but struggling. This did not happen overnight. This is the story of how ASDA slowly lost the strengths that once made it unstoppable. There was a time when ASDA had absolute clarity. It did not try to be everything. It did not chase trends. It did not compete on polish or prestige. It competed on one thing, and it owned it: value. ASDA was the place where families stretched their budgets without feeling embarrassed. It was where big shops felt rewarding. It was where prices made sense. You did not walk in hoping to be impressed. You walked in knowing you would leave feeling relieved. That certainty built trust, and trust built loyalty. For years, that formula worked so well that ASDA barely had to defend it. Shoppers knew why ASDA existed. Employees knew what they were working toward. The business moved with confidence because its identity was clear. But here is the danger of a single strength. If someone else takes it from you, everything else is exposed. At first, the threat looked small. New competitors arrived quietly. Their stores were compact. Their shelves were limited. Their brands were unfamiliar. To ASDA, they did not look like rivals. They looked like shortcuts. But while ASDA stayed comfortable, these newcomers stayed focused. They did not try to be everything. They tried to be cheaper, faster, simpler, and customers noticed. Not all at once, slowly, one trip at a time. People did not abandon ASDA. They experimented. A quick visit here, a comparison there, a receipt that looked just a little bit better, then another. Then a habit formed. ASDA began to feel the impact before it fully understood the reason. Sales softened, market share slipped. Nothing dramatic, just enough to cause concern. The response was not panic, it was reassurance. We are still strong. We are still competitive. This will pass. But it did not pass, because the problem was not a bad quarter. The problem was that ASDA's main advantage was no longer exclusive. When being the cheapest stopped being guaranteed, ASDA faced an uncomfortable question. What do we stand for now? And that question arrived at the worst possible time. Ownership changed, and with it the tone of every decision. Before, ASDA had protection. It could think long-term. It could absorb pressure. Mistakes did not immediately threaten survival. Now the business had to stand alone, and it was not standing on solid ground. Debt entered the picture, and debt changes everything. When a company is under heavy financial pressure, priorities shift. Growth becomes risky. Investment feels dangerous. Every pound has a job, and that job is not delighting customers, it is servicing obligations. Suddenly, the future feels expensive. ASDA did not lose its ambition in one moment. It lost it gradually as caution replaced confidence. Instead of asking, how do we win, the question became, how do we survive? That shift shows up everywhere. In systems that do not get upgraded, in stores that do not get refreshed, in teams that are stretched thinner each year. Customers do not see balance sheets, but they feel the results. Things that once worked smoothly started to feel unreliable. Deliveries were not as consistent. Stock gaps became more common. Small frustrations piled up. Not enough to cause outrage, but enough to cause doubt. And doubt is dangerous. Because when shoppers stop trusting a store to deliver the basics, they start looking elsewhere. Then came a move that felt smart in the short term, but costly in the long run. To relieve financial pressure, ASDA unlocked assets it had held for decades. These assets did not shout for attention. Customers rarely thought about them, but they were part of what made ASDA stable. Letting them go brought quick relief. Money flowed in, the pressure eased, but something else was lost: control.
flexibility disappeared. Options narrowed. Every store became more expensive to operate, more difficult to change, and harder to close if it stopped working. ASDA had traded stability for survival. At the same time, the internal strain grew heavier. Teams were asked to do more with less. Maintenance was delayed. Upgrades were postponed. Cleanliness, staffing, and morale all began to suffer, not because people did not care, but because resources were stretched too far. This is where the emotional breaking point arrived. Customers did not just notice higher prices or missing items. They noticed the atmosphere, the feeling that no one was quite in charge anymore.
Retail is deeply psychological. A shop does not have to be perfect, but it has to feel cared for. When that feeling disappears, trust follows. And once trust is gone, loyalty goes with it. Here is the cruel irony. At the exact moment when people needed affordable shopping the most, ASDA was too tied up fighting internal battles to fully show up for them. The demand was there. The opportunity was real. But the focus was elsewhere. Instead of strengthening what made it special, ASDA became trapped managing what it had lost. That is the climax of this story. Not a collapse, not a shutdown, but a slow realization that the business was no longer leading, it was reacting. Today, ASDA still stands, the brand still exists, the stores are still open, but the strength that once defined it, the clarity, the confidence, the trust, has been weakened. And the question now is not whether ASDA can survive. The real question is, can a company rebuild its identity after losing the very thing that once made people choose it without thinking? Because in retail, price can change, stores can be refreshed, systems can be fixed, but trust is much harder to win back. And that may be the biggest challenge ASDA faces now.